So you're trying to decide if you want a ground floor apartment in Manhattan. Well, let's talk about the pros and the cons. Welcome to PM New York. My name is Peter McLean from Corcoran, and if you're new to the channel, please hit like and subscribe, ring that bell for future notifications, and if you love the video, please leave a comment below. Always love to hear from you. Today, we're talking about the pros and cons of a ground floor apartment in New York City. When it comes to renting or buying an apartment in New York City, there are many important factors to consider. You have to consider the neighborhood, your commute, what type of apartment you want, and whether or not you would consider a ground floor unit. Some people love them, and some people would never consider an apartment at street level while living in Manhattan. Let's take a look at the pros and cons, so you can determine if a ground floor apartment is right for you. What is a ground floor apartment? Well, a ground floor apartment in New York City is the first floor of a building, and it typically overlooks the street. In some cases, a ground floor apartment may be below street level, with stairs leading down to the front door. Ground floor apartments are usually less expensive than those on higher floors, but they can be noisy and may not have as good a view. Some apartments, like the first floor of a brownstone, sit slightly above street level. Places like this can provide the perfect view for people watching as folks go about their busy day in the Big Apple. Let's take a look at some of the pros, the first one being lower prices. When it comes to New York real estate, the general rule is the lower the floor, the lower the price. First of all, ground floor units are normally smaller than those on the upper floors, and they may not have as many features or amenities. Additionally, ground floor apartments may be less private than units on higher levels, and they are more susceptible to street noise and noises from neighboring businesses. You're also going to hear the comings and goings of people throughout the day and night. For these reasons, ground floor apartments tend to be a little less expensive than those on higher floors. However, they can be a great alternative for the budget-minded renter or buyer that doesn't mind a little bit of extra noise. The next one, every New Yorker will be able to relate to: less flights of stairs. Part of living in New York is dealing with stairs. You face them on the subway and you face them in the home. Anybody who has lived in a fifth-floor walk-up apartment can certainly attest to the difficulty of move-in day when you have to lug furniture up several flights of stairs. This is one of the main advantages of a ground floor apartment in that you don't have to deal with as many stairs. This can be especially convenient if you come and go a lot, if you have large items to move in, or simply carrying the groceries or laundry. But of course, many buildings offer elevators, and another benefit of being on the ground floor is that you don't have to wait for an elevator to take you to your floor. The third pro, which I really love, is garden or courtyard access. Ground floor apartments sometimes have access to private outdoor spaces, and these can take the form of a garden, a backyard, or a patio. In a bustling city like New York City, you can't deny the benefits of having an outdoor space: fresh air, natural light, and the ability to garden. Not many people that live in the city are able to invite a host of people over and have an outdoor space to entertain them in. Okay, let's take a look at some of the cons now of a ground floor apartment in New York City. And the first one is less privacy and more street noise. One downside to living on the ground floor is that you may have less privacy than if you were living on one of the upper floors. Your windows are at or slightly above street level, and while you may people watch on the street to your heart's content, the people on the street can also take a peek inside your place too. Luckily, a nice set of blinds, shades, or drapes goes a long way to ensuring privacy and safety. Another con is greater risk of break-ins. Street-level apartments are usually a first target for thieves looking to break and enter due to the easier access of windows and doors. Thieves don't normally scale tall buildings, so the higher up you live, the less of a target your apartment is. However, that doesn't mean that break-ins don't happen on higher floors, it's just less likely. You can also secure yourself a home insurance policy to give you peace of mind if anything were to happen. Next is greater risk of flooding. Apartments on ground floors have a greater risk of flooding than those apartments on higher floors. If you remember any superstorm in New York City, you'll remember that most of the damage and flooding in the city occurred in the ground floors of buildings. This is because the water rose quickly and had nowhere to go but the ground floors. The final con I'd like to discuss with you today is the potential for unwelcome critters. Living on the ground floor or the first floor of a building there is a higher risk of unwelcome critters finding their way into your home. Be sure to keep your doors closed and make sure your windows have sealed screens. Also, talk to your super about any other preventative measures to keep out any unwanted guests. And that's some of the pros and cons of a ground floor apartment in New York City. If you want to discuss these points any further, my details are in the description below. And that's it for another episode of PM New York. My name is Peter McLean from Corcoran, and if you haven't liked or subscribed, do so now. Ring that bell for future notifications, and if you love the video, please leave a comment below. Always love to hear from you. Okay, take care, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon in the next episode of PM New York.